Hey, good morning. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. And this morning, I'm really thrilled to have with me as my guest, Megan Nishikawa, who's a partner at Hogan Lovells. Megan, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Richard, for having me.
So, Megan, let me start by asking you what made you decide to go to law school in the first place?
It's funny. I feel like, I definitely was the type of kid who liked to argue with basically everybody. I feel like that's everybody's answer to why they went to law school. So that was part of it. Debate team, all of that kind of thing. But really what I love to do, and I ended up being an English lit major in college, is I love to kind of take books. At that time, it was, fiction novels, and really deconstruct them and talk about the symbolism and the meaning. And, you can take all of that and make it into whatever you'd like. And so much of that seems to be a necessary skill set for being a lawyer. And so it just made a lot of sense for what I like to do, to end up being a lawyer. Worked for a lawyer when I was in college. I sort of, did the summer internship of doing all the files and managing all of that, answering the phones, and just really, really loved it. Really loved the environment and the atmosphere.
Oh, interesting, for sure. So did you knew that you wanted to go to law school was it before you went to college, or it was during college that you kind of made that click?
No, I think it was definitely during high school, maybe even in middle school. I think
Oh,
the
wow.
idea of being up on your feet and
Mm.
getting to speak publicly, and kind of that back and forth situation was something that really appealed to me, even from
Any
a young age, which I'm sure my parents were really thrilled about.
any TV or movies that inspired you as a kid?
Oh, I was always one of those people, even in high school, watching, a lot of Law and Order. I found actual litigation to be much less glamorous than Law and Order, but that's okay. It's still a lot of fun. But
Yeah.
yeah, loved all the cheesy Law and
Uh-huh.
Order,
Uh-huh.
aha moments. It was it
Uh-huh.
was really fun.
And how did when you finally got to law school, how did you like it? Did it live up to its expectations? What did you think when you got there?
I found law school to be not what I expected.
No.
And I think that the academics of law school, I think that it's great to get that perspective and learn about areas of the law, frankly, that I never ended up practicing.
Yeah.
But it didn't have nearly enough of the kind of grit, kind of gritty in the trenches type of
Uh-huh.
stuff that I
Mhm.
was interested in, in being a lawyer. I kind of wanted to be running around and putting out fires and dealing with crises. And, in law school, it's preparing you for all of that. So it's a
Yeah.
lot more,
Yeah.
what's going to happen. You've got a syllabus, you've got, case law that you're going to read. And it's much more like traditional school in that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
But it was a good place to learn about, especially legal writing, and how
Yeah.
different that is from, especially as an English major. It was a completely different way of expressing myself. So that was really useful. But I was ready to be done with law school when it was done.
Now, it sounds like you kind of knew you were going to be a litigator from everything you've talked about, but did you ever consider that you might be a transactional lawyer or anything like that, or a corporate lawyer? Did that come across your mind in any way?
I did. I think I romanticized the idea of being a corporate lawyer.
Hmm.
Um, before I worked for a corporate lawyer. So my very first job, when I was in college, that had anything to do with the law, was for a wills and estates and corporate tax lawyer,
Hmm.
who didn't do any litigation. And I think I was expecting this, what you see on TV, and these really, all these, whatever they are, they're billionaires signing deals, and it's all, glitz and glamour and whatever. And it was just not that way. And this
Uh-huh.
guy he was wonderful. He had, a ton of work all the time, but he was buried in paperwork. It was a lot of paperwork. It was a lot of phone calls, and it wasn't any court. Which is good for him. It means he's doing his job, that he
Yeah.
wasn't ever
Yeah.
in court.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I realized that that was a big part of what was attracting me to being a lawyer. And so it just sort of solidified my desire to be a litigator, and then, later a trial lawyer in particular.
Yeah, right. Well, then walk through a little bit of how has your litigation trial practice career evolved over the years now to where you are now? How would you kind of describe the arc of that trajectory, if you will?
Absolutely. So it was really trial by fire for me. I came out of law school in 2010, which was a rough time to come out of law school, economy-wise.
Yeah.
And really, as a first-year associate, just the timing worked out that I started, and there happened to be this big trial happening. And so about to happen. And so I just sort of I just sort of showed up and, was there and doing everything that I could, which, as a first year associate wasn't a whole lot. But, there early, there late, ordering food, grabbing coffee, writing the brief, doing the copies and the mailing and, whatever needed to be done. But I had this opportunity. It was a very lean trial team, and they were watching real people, real talented trial lawyers try a case. And it was a 4-month-long trial in San Francisco Superior. It was awesome. I was just bit by the trial bug. I said, this is it. This is what I want to do. And I will make copies for the next 5 years if it means that I get to do this. And luckily, I ended up building a really great relationship, not only with the lawyers the partners at my firm, but also with the client at the time, who had an in-house person who was she was just really invested in young talent, and, really took the time to talk to me about, she used to be a partner at a law firm, and then a judge, and now in-house at this big corporation. And she would spend her time telling me, hey, look at, why do you think that, our first share, why do you think she did that? The reason she, do you see how effective that is? You see how great that is? Or, look at what this guy's doing and how it didn't go over so well. And here's why you don't do things like that. And here's why other things matter. And so between, her perspective and the lead trial counsel's perspective, and just being around that, really helped me to develop as a young trial lawyer. And then over the years, I got to be up on my feet for the first time in a trial as a mid-level associate, which was, not common at a big law firm. Same thing when I was a senior associate, arguing dispositive motions, taking witnesses, taking experts, really having to do that stressful kind of day to day. You never know what's going to happen. Juror gets sick. We've got to deal with that. We've got to push this, reorganize the schedule. And I just, I won't lie and say that every minute of it was the best day of my life, but it was something that I really enjoyed, and as a whole. And I'm just at every opportunity looking to, especially once COVID hit and nobody was trying cases, at least not in person, really just always, every time I'm out of a trial, I'm looking for the next one.
Interesting. Now, I'm sure you've tried a whole bunch of different kinds of cases. Give me kind of a feel for the kind of range of cases that, the types of cases you tried.
So a lot of what I've done over the last 10 years, what I've had the opportunity to try, are products liability cases. So, it's a little bit of a Venn diagram between products liability, sort of traditional, there's a product, it caused some sort of harm, and then environmental law, which, typically you're thinking of things like CERCLA, RCRA, statutory schemes. But where you've got overlap in California State Court in particular is this space where the court has permitted a plaintiff, whether that's an individual or a city, to pursue what we call traditional tort claims against a corporation. So they don't have to use the federal statutory scheme that's been designed for these types of cases. Instead, they are permitted by the courts to sue under, what we all learn about in law school, products liability, negligence. They're able to seek things like punitive damages, which they can't do under the traditional environmental scheme. And they've got an easier time of it in terms of statute of limitations usually, and the case tends to resolve more quickly in state civil court. And so the majority of my cases for the last decade have been in California state court, typically in very rural areas, dealing with contamination issues based on a product that was manufactured a long time ago by a large corporation, and trying to figure out, where responsibility lies. And then, of course, the types of money damages and treatment that you need to treat whatever it is that is contaminated.
Sounds like you have to play a lot of historian then.
A lot of historical data.
Yeah.
It's really funny. I didn't know, growing up in Hawaii, we're not exactly a big agriculture state. We don't have, a ton of room to be growing a whole lot. And I have learned a lot about agriculture and, the air we breathe and the water we drink. And, the number of times that I've been in trial in, the Central Valley, and I'm out in a field, taking pictures of almond trees or whatever, with my iPhone, and asking this poor, farmer for permission to take pictures of his trees, and he's looking at me like I'm crazy. It's that, to make your opening statement and, have a very kind of involved presentation to jurors who are in that area, right? I mean, trying to connect with people and really say, hey, this is why you should listen to me, even though, I'm a San Francisco person and I don't live in, Merced or Fresno or these places. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun.
Now, do those cases frequently go to trial? I would think all those kind of cases would all settle, no?
Some of them do, and some of them don't. And I learned, actually, it was probably right around when I made partner, that this client, who I, at this point, had she'd known me since I was a first year associate. Now she was kind of, my person, 10 years in. And I had started to work on mediations and, sit in the room and do the whole, 8 hours of back and forth with, the mediator and all that. And she said to me, I don't know that this is your highest and best use. Yeah, I don't know that you're great at the whole informal resolution part of this. It's settling of cases is something I think maybe I get a little biased on. When you try a case and you get another case that's similar in facts and history, you really feel like, no, we should try this case, let's do it. But of course, I don't get to make that decision. That's the client's decision.
Yeah, of course. So how often do you get to go to trial? Is it like once a year or more often than that even?
It hasn't been that often. I mean, it's been probably every 2 or 3 years I've had a big trial. So it's been, 4 months long. It's funny. I've never tried a case that lasted less than 4 months.
Wow. Oh my God.
Where you're living in the hotel and just kind of, that's all you're doing for 4 months. So I'm hoping that with this move to a new firm, that maybe there will be trials that last a little bit less time than that. Although it's a pretty great experience, but I'm open to shorter trials.
Was your last trial before the pandemic? I'm assuming it was last trial before the pandemic. Yeah.
It was. Yeah. It was actually 2019 and ended September of 2019. So we were still kind of coming off of that, and then pandemic hit. And frankly, we're still, unfortunately, a lot of argument, especially in the Bay Area, is still being conducted virtually, which is, can be kind of a bummer.
Now, is the products liability, is that a space you kind of just accidentally stumbled into, or did you kind of gravitate towards that? How did that become kind of your area of expertise?
A little of both, I think. I've always found tort in general to be a lot of fun. That's really kind of the only word I can use for it. I find that one of the things that I really enjoy about trial is the theater of it, and kind of the, just the owning of the space, and the walking around and crafting a story, and being a storyteller. And tort really lends itself to that. You know, I found that when I'm dealing with, you know, a contract dispute or something like that, you know, there's not as much theater to a contract dispute that there is to, you know, something was created, something bizarre happened, and now you've got this problem. And, you know, there are lots of ways to kind of make that sound really interesting or really not, depending on what you're trying to do. But, you know, with a contract dispute, it's not as easy.
Yeah, totally. Well, it sounds like you've obviously stumbled into something you love. Have you ever thought about maybe a different career, maybe being in-house at a company? Does that ever strike you as something you'd want to do at some point?
Not really.
Love
You
the
know,
honesty.
it's funny. I don't think that I would ever. I have a lot of friends who have gone in-house and really enjoy it.
Yeah.
But the thing that they always tell me when they go in-house is, you could never do this because you don't get to be up on your feet in court anymore, right? You have other people who are doing that. And what's really nice is you get to sit and critique whatever it was that they just did that you don't think was very good. But, you know, you're not the one who's doing it. And, you know, for me, that's the fun part. That's what I really want to be doing. And so I think it would be hard for me to go in-house. And honestly, I remember being a young lawyer, and even in law school, or even in college when I knew I was going to law school, the number of people I would run into who were lawyers who would say things like, "Oh, you're going to law school? You shouldn't do that." You know, or, "Oh, you want to be a lawyer? Oh, I'm sorry. You shouldn't, don't be a lawyer." And it always struck me, even at the time, as being really sad, because I don't know why you would spend so much time and energy doing something you don't enjoy. But now that I've been doing it for, you know, over a decade and hope to be doing it for many decades more, I really love it. And I can't imagine doing really anything else. It's something that I feel really passionate about.
Yeah. Well, Megan, it's really been great talking to you. I've interviewed so many lawyers, but I can always tell right away when somebody really loves what they do, and it totally came across today. So I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
This is Richard Hsu and Megan Nishikawa. Thanks.